On the eve of his wedding, a little girl walked into the hotel and called the Millionaire CEO her dad. "Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories, your own family story channel. Heavenly God, as Christmas draws near, we thank you for the gift of life, love, and togetherness. Please bless every woman with deep strength, gentle peace, and a heart that never gives up. Cover our homes with harmony, our days with hope, and our nights with calm rest. Let healing flow where there is pain, joy rise where there is heaviness, and light shine in every heart. May this Christmas bring renewed faith, good health, and quiet miracles to every family here. If your heart is true, like the video. If your love is real, write, 'I am with Mr. Peter.'" The lobby of the Grandstone Hotel glittered like a cathedral of wealth, all marble columns and crystal chandeliers catching the afternoon sun. Josh Brown stood near the concierge desk, Italian leather briefcase in one hand, phone in the other, reviewing the final merger documents that would change his life forever. 3 days. That's all that remained before he married Natasha Sterling and became one of the most powerful men in American business. His tech company, Brown Tech Solutions, had climbed from a garage startup to a $2 billion empire in just 6 years. The wedding wasn't just a ceremony. It was a coronation. Natasha's family controlled Sterling Financial Group, the third largest investment bank in the country. Together, they would be unstoppable. The kind of power that opened doors to rooms most people didn't even know existed. "Mr. Brown?" His wedding planner approached, tablet in hand, her heels clicking against marble. "Your mother has arrived for the final venue walkthrough. She's asking for you in the grand ballroom." Josh nodded, pocketing his phone. He turned toward the hallway, his mind already calculating guest arrangements and seating charts, when a small voice cut through the lobby noise like a knife. "Daddy!" The word stopped him cold. He turned slowly, heart suddenly pounding for reasons he didn't understand. A little girl stood 10 feet away, maybe 5 years old, wearing a faded pink dress and sneakers that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled into 2 puffs, and she clutched a worn, stuffed rabbit against her chest. But it was her eyes that made Josh's breath catch. Dark brown, wide, and achingly familiar in a way that made his chest tight. "Daddy!" she said again, louder this time, her face breaking into a smile that hit him like a physical blow. The lobby seemed to freeze. Guests turned. Hotel staff paused mid-motion. Josh's security detail moved forward, hands raised to intercept the child. "Wait," Josh heard himself say, his voice barely working. The girl took a step toward him, and that's when he saw the rabbit more clearly. Faded blue fabric, one ear torn and stitched back together with careful hands. And there, barely visible on the remaining good ear, embroidered in thread that had once been gold, Josh. His heart stopped. "Whoopee, baby, no!" A woman pushed through the small crowd that had begun to form. Josh's entire world tilted on its axis. Issa. She looked exactly the same and completely different all at once. Same beautiful face, same deep brown eyes that used to look at him like he hung the moon. But her shoulders were tight with exhaustion, her hands rough and work-worn, and she wore a hotel-made uniform with a name tag that read, "Issa, Housekeeping." 5 years. 5 years since he'd seen her face. 5 years since he'd made the worst decision of his life. 5 years of pretending she'd never existed. Issa grabbed Whoopi's hand, pulling her back with gentle urgency. "I'm so sorry, sir. She saw someone on television and got confused. Please forgive the disturbance." "Sir." She called him sir. Like he was a stranger. Like they hadn't spent nights planning a future together. "Issa?" Josh breathed, and her name felt foreign on his tongue after so long. Her eyes met his for one horrible, beautiful second. Fear, anger, pain, recognition. All of it flashed across her face before she schooled her features into professional blankness. "Whoopee, baby, come on. We need to go." Issa's voice shook despite her attempt at control. "But mommy, you said, now, Whoopee." Issa's tone sharpened, and the little girl's face crumpled. Tears welled in those familiar eyes. Josh took a step forward without thinking. "Wait, please, Mr. Brown," Issa said, her voice carefully modulated for the watching crowd. "I apologize for the interruption. My daughter made a mistake. It won't happen again." My daughter. The words echoed in Josh's skull like thunder. Issa turned, pulling Whoopi toward the service corridor. The little girl looked back over her shoulder, tears streaming down her face, her small hand reaching out. "Bye-bye, Rabbit Man," she said, her voice breaking. Then they were gone, swallowed by the hotel's hidden passages where the help moved unseen, invisible to people like him. Josh stood frozen, the lobby returning to its normal rhythms around him. His security chief approached, concern etched on his professional face. "Sir, should I have them removed from the premises?" "No," Josh said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, hollow and distant. "No, it's fine." "Mr. Brown," his wedding planner's voice cut through his daze. "Your mother is waiting. She's called 3 times." Josh looked down. On the marble floor where Whoopi had stood lay the stuffed rabbit. He bent and picked it up, his fingers finding the embroidered name on the ear. He'd won this rabbit at a street carnival 6 years ago. He'd given it to Issa with a stupid romantic promise. "If we ever have a daughter, this is hers." She'd laughed and kissed him and said, "When we have a daughter, Josh Brown, when?" His hands were shaking. "Mr. Brown?" The wedding planner's concern was growing. "Are you all right?" Josh closed his fist around the rabbit. Through the glass doors of the service corridor, he could just make out 2 figures disappearing around a corner, one tall and proud despite the maid's uniform, one small, still crying, looking back at him with eyes he saw in the mirror every morning. "Sir?" his security chief pressed. Josh pulled out his phone with trembling fingers and opened the hotel's employee directory. His position on the board gave him access to everything. He scrolled through hundreds of names until he found it. Issa Rae, employee number 2847. Housekeeping, 3rd shift, hired 3 months ago. She'd been here for 3 months, working overnight shifts, cleaning rooms in the same hotel where he was planning his wedding, moving through his world invisible, the way the wealthy preferred their servants. "Mr. Brown, your mother is really insisting." "Tell her I'll be there in 10 minutes, Josh said, his voice flat. He looked at the rabbit in his hands, at the name stitched into worn fabric with love and care, at the toy his daughter had carried and loved and dropped as she was dragged away from him. His daughter. The word felt foreign and right and terrifying all at once. Josh turned and walked not toward the grand ballroom where his mother waited, not toward his penthouse suite where wedding gifts were stacked like trophies, but toward the hotel's administrative offices. He needed to know. He needed to understand. But most of all, he needed to know why Issa Rae, the woman he'd loved more than life itself, the woman he'd abandoned for money and status and his family's approval, was working as a maid in his hotel, and why their daughter thought he was just the rabbit man. Chapter 2. The Rabbit. Josh sat alone in his penthouse suite as evening settled over the city, the stuffed rabbit on the coffee table in front of him. His mother had been furious when he'd skipped the venue walkthrough, but he'd barely heard her angry phone messages. His mind was 6 years in the past, in a different life, when he'd been nobody and had everything that mattered. He'd met Issa at a coffee shop near the university. She'd been working 3 jobs to put herself through community college. He'd been coding in the corner booth every night, living on cheap coffee and ambition, dreaming of building something that mattered. She'd noticed him there night after night, always alone, always working. One evening, she'd brought him a sandwich without asking. "You've been here for 8 hours and haven't eaten anything," she'd said with a smile that made the fluorescent lights seem warm. "This is on the house. Well, on me. Don't tell my manager." He'd looked up at her and forgotten every line of code he'd ever written. They'd fallen in love the way people do in songs and stories and real life when it's real. She'd believed in him when he had nothing but ideas and determination. When he'd worked 18-hour days trying to get his first app to market, she'd sat beside him with her own textbooks, studying for her nursing prerequisites while he coded. They'd shared dreams in that tiny apartment. Marriage, kids, a life built together from scratch and love. Josh picked up the rabbit, remembering the night he'd won it. Some street carnival had set up in the park, and he'd insisted on trying the basketball toss, even though they could barely afford dinner that week. He'd been terrible at it, spending $20 they didn't have before finally sinking 3 shots in a row through sheer determination. "If we ever have a daughter," he'd said, presenting the rabbit to Isa with mock ceremony, "this is hers." "When we have a daughter, Josh Brown," she'd corrected, laughing. "When, not if." She'd kissed him right there under the carnival lights, and he'd never been happier in his life. Never felt more seen, more loved, more himself. That was the Josh who'd won this rabbit. The Josh who'd believed love was enough. Then his app had taken off. Suddenly investors were calling. His mother, who'd barely spoken to him since he'd dropped out of the business program she'd paid for, had reappeared with advice and connections. Within 6 months, his startup had grown from 2 people in a living room to 20 employees in actual office space. Diane Brown had made her position clear from the beginning. "This Issa girl is fine for where you were, Joshua, but she's not appropriate for where you're going. Mom, I love her. Love is a luxury you can't afford right now. You're building something. You need the right partner, someone who understands business, someone from the right background." "Background? You mean, I mean someone who won't embarrass you at investor dinners, someone who knows which fork to use, someone who doesn't work 3 minimum wage jobs and smell like coffee and desperation." The arguments had escalated over months. His mother had introduced him to suitable women at every opportunity. She'd made subtle comments about Issa's clothes, her lack of formal education, her family. The pressure had been constant and corrosive, wearing him down like water on stone. Then came the ultimatum. Josh's uncle had died, leaving a substantial inheritance, but the will had conditions. The money would go to Josh only if he was settled appropriately by his 30th birthday. His mother had control of the trust until then. She'd sat him down in her study and laid it out plainly. "You can have Issa, or you can have the future you've worked for, but you can't have both. The family won't accept her. The investors won't respect you with her. And I won't release your inheritance if you marry her." That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Joshua. It's strategic. Make the smart choice. He'd been 24 years old, terrified of losing everything he'd built, and weak. So weak. Josh stood and walked to the window, looking out at the glittering city that had become his kingdom. He remembered the night he'd made his choice. Isa had been waiting at their apartment. She'd made dinner, which she couldn't afford to do often. She'd been excited about something, practically glowing with news she wanted to share. He'd walked in with a check for $50,000 and a coward's speech prepared. "We need to talk." Her smile had faded instantly. "Josh, what's wrong?" "This isn't working anymore. We're going in different directions." "What are you talking about? We're going in the same direction. Together. We've always been together." "Isa, be realistic. You're still in community college. I'm running a company. We want different things now." He'd watched her face break, and he'd kept talking because stopping would have meant facing what he was doing. "I care about you. I do. But this relationship doesn't make sense anymore. Here." He'd held out the check. "This should help you finish school. It's the least I can do." She'd looked at the check like it was a snake coiled to strike. "Is this about your mother?" "This is about me. About what I need." "What you need," she'd repeated slowly. "What about what we need? What we built?" "Isa, please don't make this harder." "Harder?" Her voice had risen. "You're ending 4 years with a check and corporate speak, and I'm making it hard. I'm trying to do the right thing here. The right thing would be keeping your promises. The right thing would be choosing us." "I can't," he'd said, and there it was, the truth. "I can't choose you over everything else." The silence that followed had been worse than screaming. Finally, Isa had spoken, her voice terrifyingly calm. "Get out. Let's talk about this rationally. Get out!" She'd thrown the check at him. Take your money and your rationalizations and get out of my life. Issa, if you walk out that door, Josh Brown, don't ever come back. Don't call, don't text, don't exist to me. He should have stayed, should have fought for her, should have chosen love over money and family approval and all the poisonous things he'd let matter more than the only person who'd ever truly mattered. But he'd walked out. He'd blocked her number on his mother's advice, thrown himself into work, told himself he'd made the mature decision. Within a year, he'd tripled his company's value. Within 2, he'd made his first million. Within 5, he'd built an empire. And lost everything that had ever been real. Josh turned from the window and looked at the rabbit again. All these years he'd told himself Issa had moved on, found someone better, built a happy life without him. He'd never imagined she'd been pregnant, never imagined she'd tried to tell him, never imagined his own mother would have thrown her out and blocked her calls. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Issa had been carrying his child when he'd abandoned her. She'd tried to reach him, and he'd been unreachable by design. His mother had made sure of it. Josh pulled out his phone and called his head of security. I need you to find someone. Issa Rae. Get me everything, where she lives, where she's been, everything since... His voice caught. Everything since 5 years ago. Sir, just do it. Tonight. I don't care what it costs. He ended the call and sank onto the couch, the rabbit in his hands. Somewhere in this hotel, Issa was working. Cleaning rooms, invisible to guests who would never look at a maid long enough to see her face. And somewhere, a little girl named Whoopi was asking questions about her daddy. The daddy who'd chosen money over love. The daddy who'd never known she existed. The daddy who was the rabbit man. Josh buried his face in his hands and for the first time in 5 years let himself feel the full weight of what he'd done. Chapter 3. The woman who survived Josh found the service elevator near midnight. The hotel's overnight shift would have started an hour ago, and according to the employee database, Issa would be assigned to the executive floors. His floors. She'd probably been cleaning his suite for months while he slept, invisible as only service workers could be in places like this. The thought made him sick. He rode up to the 42nd floor, where his penthouse occupied half the space. The hallways were quiet, elegant, empty except for the soft glow of sconces on cream walls. Then he heard it, a housekeeping cart squeaking around the corner. Josh followed the sound, his heart pounding harder with each step. Issa stood outside suite 4216, her back to him, carefully replacing towels in her cart. She'd pulled her hair back in a tight bun, and even in the shapeless uniform, she moved with a grace that memory recognized before his mind fully processed what he was seeing. Issa. She stiffened, didn't turn around, her hands stilled on the towels. The penthouse service is handled by day shift, Mr. Brown. I don't work those rooms. If there's a problem with your suite, you should call the front desk. Her voice was professional, distant, like he was just another rich guest making demands. I'm not here about my suite. Then you shouldn't be here at all. Guests aren't supposed to be in service areas. We need to talk. No, we really don't. She moved to push her cart away. Josh stepped around to block her path. Issa, please. She finally looked at him, really looked at him. Her eyes were flat and hard. Please what, Josh? Please disrupt my work shift. Please make me uncomfortable in one of the only jobs I could get. Please what? Is she mine? The question hung in the air like smoke. Issa's jaw tightened. You gave up the right to ask me that 5 years ago when you threw money at me and walked away. I didn't know you were pregnant. No, you didn't, because you blocked my calls and had security remove me from your building and chose not to know. I never... Josh stopped. What are you talking about? Are we really doing this? Issa's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. Fine, let's do this. 3 weeks after you left me, I found out I was pregnant. I tried to call you 23 times. Every call went straight to voicemail, so I went to your office. She was shaking now, 5 years of buried fury rising to the surface. Your mother was there, in the lobby, like she was waiting for me. She took one look at me and called security, said I was harassing her son. I tried to tell her about the baby and she laughed, Josh, said girls like me were always trying to trap men like you. Josh felt the floor dropping out from under him. She offered me $200,000 to disappear, to never contact you again, to go away quietly and raise your child like you never existed. And you took it? Issa's hand cracked across his face so fast he didn't see it coming. The sound echoed in the empty hallway. I threw it back in her face, she said, her voice shaking with rage. I told her I didn't want her blood money. I wanted you. I wanted our child to have a father who gave a damn. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't stop. So she had me escorted out by security, called my jobs, got me fired from 2 of them. I was homeless for a month before I found a shelter that would take pregnant women. I worked until I went into labor. Literally, I was waitressing when my water broke. Josh couldn't breathe. I had Whoopi alone in a county hospital. No family, no support. Just me and a baby girl who had your eyes, and I loved her so much it hurt. Every single day I loved her so much it hurt. Issa wiped her face roughly. So don't you dare stand there and ask if she's yours like you have any right to know. Don't you dare. I'm sorry. Sorry? She laughed bitterly. Sorry doesn't feed a child, Josh. Sorry doesn't pay for daycare or medical bills or keep the lights on. Sorry is just another word that costs you nothing. What can I do? Nothing. There's nothing you can do. We survived without you. We'll keep surviving without you. Josh pulled out his phone. I'm calling my lawyer right now. Child support, backdated to her birth. Whatever you need. Stop. Issa's voice cut like glass. Just stop. You think money fixes this? You think writing a check makes you her father? Then what? Tell me what to do. I don't know. The words burst out of her. I don't know, okay? Because the man I loved, the man I thought I knew, he would never have walked away. He would have fought. He would have chosen us, but that man doesn't exist. He never did. He did exist. I was just weak. I was scared and weak, and I chose wrong. Issa shook her head. You chose your empire. Fine, you got it. But you don't get to come back 5 years later and play daddy because you suddenly feel guilty. I want to know her. I want to be her father. She thinks you're the rabbit man, Josh. Do you understand that? She doesn't know what a father is supposed to be because she's never had one. She doesn't ask anymore. She stopped asking. The words hit him like bullets. I can change that. Let me try. Why? So you can walk away again when it gets hard? When your mother disapproves? When it interferes with your merger and your wedding and your perfect life? I'm not walking away. You're getting married in 3 days. The reminder fell between them like a bomb. That's different, Josh said, but the words sounded hollow even to him. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like the same choice. Money and status and the right kind of woman, just like your mother wanted. Natasha is, I don't care who she is, she's not my problem. My problem is a 5-year-old girl who saw your face on the news and asked me if you were the prince from the story I tell her. Josh's throat closed. What story? Issa's voice broke. I told her that her daddy was a prince who had to go save his kingdom, that he loved her very much, but he had important work to do. I lied to my daughter every night for 5 years because the truth would break her heart. The truth being that you didn't want us, that we weren't good enough, that money mattered more than love. That's not true. Isn't it? Issa grabbed her cart. I have to get back to work. Some of us have to actually work for a living. She started to push past him, but Josh caught her arm gently. Issa, please, just tell me, is Whoopi mine? She looked at his hand on her arm, then at his face. For a moment, he saw past the anger to the exhaustion beneath, the years of struggle, the loneliness, the weight of raising a child alone. Yes, she said quietly. She's yours. Biologically, legally, in every way that means nothing without action. She pulled her arm free. But if you want to be her father, you'll have to prove it. Not with money, not with apologies, with your presence, your time, your choice to show up. I will. I swear I will. We'll see, Isa said. We'll see if Josh Brown can choose love over everything else, because that's what being a parent is. Choosing them, every single day, no matter what it costs. She pushed her cart down the hall without looking back. Josh stood alone in the elegant hallway, the words echoing in his head. Choosing them, every single day, no matter what it costs. In 3 days, he was supposed to marry Natasha Sterling and cement the merger that would make him one of the most powerful men in the country. But tonight, he'd learned he had a daughter named Whoopi who thought he was the rabbit man. A daughter who'd stopped asking about her daddy because the answer always hurt. A daughter he hadn't known existed because he'd been too much of a coward to take Isa's calls 5 years ago. Josh pulled out his phone and stared at the screen. One call, one decision. He could stop this now. Call his lawyer, get a DNA test to make it official, start the process of being Whoopi's father. But what about Natasha? The merger? The empire he'd built? What about the choice? His phone buzzed, a text from his mother. Stop avoiding me. The rehearsal dinner is tomorrow. Don't embarrass this family. Josh looked down the hall where Isa had disappeared, then at his phone, then at the rabbit still in his jacket pocket. The choice. Always the choice, and he still didn't know if he was strong enough to make the right one. Chapter 4. What his mother did. The next morning, Josh drove to his mother's estate in the suburbs. The house where he'd grown up sat on 3 manicured acres, all stone and glass and carefully curated elegance. Diane Brown had built this monument to success after his father died, using insurance money and ruthless financial strategy to climb from comfortable middle class to true wealth. She'd done it for him, she always said, to give him opportunities, to open doors, to make sure he married the right kind of woman. Josh found her in the garden room having tea with 2 women from her book club. She looked up as he entered, her smile perfectly calibrated. Ladies, you'll excuse me. My son needs to discuss wedding details. The women left with knowing smiles. Diane waited until the door closed before her expression shifted from gracious hostess to displeased mother. You missed the venue walkthrough yesterday. The planner was mortified. We need to talk about Isa. Diane's mouth tightened. That's ancient history, Joshua. Why are we discussing it now? Because I saw her at the hotel with her daughter. Her daughter is not your concern. She's 5 years old, Mom. Isa got pregnant right after I left her. Girls like that always claim pregnancy afterward. It's a classic manipulation. You knew. The realization was dawning, cold and horrible. You knew she was pregnant. Diane set down her teacup with careful precision. I suspected. She came to your office rambling about it. I handled the situation. Handled it? You had her thrown out. I protected you from a very obvious trap. You were 24 years old, about to close your first major deal. A pregnancy claim from some girl would have destroyed everything. She wasn't some girl. I loved her. You were infatuated with her. There's a difference. And you had more important things to focus on than playing house with a waitress. Josh's hands were shaking. You offered her money to disappear. Of course I did. It's what people like that want. Money. I offered her $200,000 to sign an NDA and leave you alone. Very generous, considering we had no proof the child was even yours. She refused it, which proves my point exactly. If she'd really been pregnant and desperate, she would have taken it. Girls in trouble take money. She was clearly running a scam. Josh pulled out his phone and showed his mother a photo his security team had sent him earlier. Whoopi, at a playground, smiling at the camera with his eyes in her face. This is Whoopi, my daughter, 5 years old. She exists. She's mine. Diane barely glanced at the screen. That proves nothing. Lots of children have brown eyes. I'm getting a DNA test. Joshua, don't be ridiculous. You're getting married in 2 days, to Natasha Sterling. Do you understand what's at stake here? The merger alone is worth billions. The political connections her father brings are invaluable. You'll have influence in Congress, in the Fed, in circles that took me 30 years to access. I don't care. You should care, because if you derail this wedding over some fantasy of playing daddy to a child who's been fine without you for 5 years, you'll lose everything. Not everything. Your company will collapse without Sterling's backing. You know that. The loan terms we negotiated depend on this marriage. Walk away now and within 6 months, you'll be bankrupt. Josh stood up. Is that what you told Issa? That I'd be ruined if she didn't disappear? I told her the truth. That you had a future she couldn't be part of. That she was holding you back. That if she really loved you, she'd let you go. You had no right. I had every right. I'm your mother. Protecting you is my job. You didn't protect me. You controlled me. You cut Issa out of my life without telling me. You blocked her calls. You had her fired from her jobs when she was pregnant. I did what needed to be done. She was homeless, Mom. She had my baby alone in a county hospital. Diane's expression didn't change. If the child truly was yours, she could have pursued legal action, filed for child support. She chose not to. That's on her. She chose not to because she has more dignity than to force herself where she's not wanted. Exactly. So let sleeping dogs lie. You have a beautiful life ahead of you. Don't destroy it for misplaced guilt. Josh looked at the woman who'd raised him, the woman who'd scraped together money for his education, who'd networked and strategized and built connections to give him every advantage, the woman who'd thrown a pregnant woman out of his building and called it protection. Did you ever love Dad? He asked quietly. Diane blinked. What does that have to do with anything? Did you? Or was that just strategic too? I loved your father very much. But love doesn't pay the bills, Joshua. Love doesn't build empires. I learned that the hard way when he died and left us with nothing but debt. So you made sure I'd never make the same mistake, never love someone who couldn't advance my career. I made sure you'd never be vulnerable. There's a difference. Josh walked to the door. I'm getting the DNA test, and I'm going to be in Whoopi's life. And Natasha. I don't know yet. Then figure it out quickly, because if you jilt a Sterling, they'll destroy you. Leonard doesn't forgive embarrassment, and I won't be there to pick up the pieces when your little fantasy falls apart. Josh paused at the door. The man I was when I loved Issa? He would never have listened to you. He would have fought for her. He would have been a better man. He would have been a poor man. Maybe poor is better than empty. He left without waiting for a response. In his car, Josh finally allowed himself to break. His mother had known. The whole time she'd known, and she'd made sure Issa disappeared, made sure he never found out about his daughter, all to protect an empire he was realizing meant nothing. His phone buzzed. A text from his security chief. Found Issa Rae's address. Sending now. The address appeared. A neighborhood across town. The kind of place his mother would never venture. The kind of place he'd forgotten existed while building his gilded cage. Josh started the car. He had 2 days until his wedding. 2 days to figure out who he was going to be. The man his mother had made him, or the man Issa had believed he could be. The choice was always the same. It had always been the same, and he was finally running out of time to make it. Chapter 5. The Other Woman. Josh had never been to Natasha Sterling's private office before. Their relationship had been conducted in carefully orchestrated public spaces. Investor dinners, charity galas, strategic appearances where photographers could capture the power couple everyone expected them to be. But today he needed privacy. And he owed her honesty. Her office occupied the top floor of Sterling Financial Group's headquarters, all chrome and glass with a view of the entire city. Natasha stood at the window when her assistant showed him in, her reflection sharp in the darkening glass. I wondered when you'd come, she said without turning around. You know. Of course I know. My father's investigators are very thorough. She finally turned to face him. Natasha Sterling was beautiful in the way expensive things were beautiful. Polished. Perfect. Cold. The question is whether you're here to apologize or to end this. Josh had prepared speeches, explanations, but standing in front of her, they all felt hollow. I have a daughter. Her name is Whoopi. She's 5 years old. I didn't know she existed until 2 days ago. Natasha poured herself a drink from the bar cart. And her mother, the maid at your hotel? Issa. Her name is Issa Ray. We were together before all of this. Before you became someone who mattered, you mean? The words weren't cruel, just factual. That's what he'd always appreciated about Natasha, her honesty about what they were to each other. Yes. She took a long drink. My father wants to sue you for breach of contract if you back out. Did you know our engagement agreement includes a morality clause, creating a scandal before the wedding voids several investment commitments? You'd lose approximately 40% of your company's value overnight. I know. And yet you're here, considering it. I don't know what I'm considering yet. That's why I came, to be honest with you. Natasha laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. Honest. That's rich. We've been engaged for 8 months, Josh. 8 months of planning the wedding of the century, and you were never honest about the most important thing. What thing? That you don't love me. The silence stretched between them. I respect you, Josh said carefully. Respect. Yes, we respect each other. We have compatible goals. We make sense on paper. But love? She set down her glass. Do you want to know something? I don't love you either. Josh looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in months. Past the perfect clothes and strategic smile. She looked tired, lonely. Then why are we doing this? Because it's what's expected. I'm 33 years old, Josh. In my world, that's ancient for an unmarried woman. My father's been pushing me towards suitable matches since I graduated business school. You checked all the boxes. Successful, ambitious, attractive enough for the society pages. Flattering. It's honest. We've always been honest about the business aspects. Why pretend there's more? Because maybe there should be more. Natasha walked to her desk and pulled out a folder. These are the contracts that depend on our marriage. The Sterling Brown merger. The joint ventures. The political access my father's connections provide. If this wedding doesn't happen, you lose all of it. She slid the folder across to him. I've looked at the numbers. Without sterling backing, your company survives about 6 months before the debt load crushes you. Maybe less if my father decides to actively work against you. I know. So you'll be destroyed financially. Your reputation will be ruined. Society will blackball you. You'll go from a penthouse to bankruptcy court in under a year. I know. For a woman you left 5 years ago and a child you just met. Josh opened the folder, scanning contracts that represented years of work. Billions of dollars. Everything he'd built since he'd walked away from Issa. Let me ask you something, he said. Are you happy? Natasha blinked. What kind of question is that? A simple one. Are you happy? When you wake up in the morning, when you go to sleep at night, are you happy? Happiness is for people who can afford to be impractical. That's not an answer. She sat down, and for the first time since he'd known her, Natasha Sterling looked uncertain. I'm satisfied. My life is everything I was told it should be. I run divisions of my father's company. I have influence. I have security. But are you happy? I don't know what that question even means. Josh closed the folder. I think I do. I think I had it once. Real happiness. Not satisfaction or security or success, just pure, stupid happiness, and I threw it away because I was scared. And now you want it back. I want to know if it's possible, if I can be the man I was before I let fear turn me into this. He gestured at himself, at the expensive suit and the power he wore like armor. Natasha stood and walked to the window again. My father will destroy you if you embarrass me. If you jilt me at the altar, he'll make sure you never work in this industry again. I know. But you're considering it anyway. I'm considering a lot of things. She turned to face him. Can I tell you something? Something I've never told anyone? Of course. I had someone once. In college, a musician. Completely inappropriate by my father's standards. Poor family, no prospects. But he made me laugh, really laugh, the kind where you forget to be careful. Josh waited. My father found out, offered him money to leave, $200,000 to never contact me again. Josh's stomach dropped. He took it, Natasha continued, didn't even hesitate, signed the NDA and disappeared. I learned an important lesson that day. Love doesn't survive money. It can't. Someone always has a price. Issa didn't take the money. My mother offered her $200,000 to disappear. She threw it back in her face. Natasha's expression flickered. Surprise, maybe respect. Then she's either a fool or she actually loved you. I think she loved me. Past tense. And now? Now she hates me. And she has every right to. Natasha poured another drink, then poured one for Josh. She handed it to him. Here's what's going to happen. We're getting married in 2 days, 400 guests, $20 million in arrangements, every society page in America covering it. That's happening. The contracts are signed. The venues are booked. It's too late to stop. Natasha, let me finish. We're getting married. But after, she took a breath. After is your choice. We can have a real marriage, try to build something, or we can have a paper marriage, strategic, separate lives, whatever you want. Why would you agree to that? Because I'm tired, Josh. I'm tired of pretending, of performing, of being the perfect sterling daughter. And if you're brave enough to want something real, maybe that's worth more than another strategic alliance. She raised her glass. To honesty, finally. Josh raised his own glass but didn't drink. I can't promise you anything. I don't know what I'm going to do. I know. That's what makes you different from every other man my father's paraded past me. You actually don't know. You're actually struggling with this choice. That's a good thing? It's a human thing. I'd forgotten what that looked like. Josh set down his glass without drinking. I need to go. I need to think. Think fast. Rehearsal dinner is tomorrow night. And Josh? She stopped him at the door. Whatever you decide, decide for the right reasons. Don't choose me because you're scared of my father. And don't choose her because you're guilty. Choose whoever you actually want. What if I don't know who I want? Then you're not ready to choose anyone. Josh left Natasha's office more confused than when he'd arrived. 2 days until his wedding. 2 days to decide between the empire he'd built and the family he'd abandoned. 2 days to figure out if Josh Brown was brave enough to choose love over fear, or if he'd been his mother's son for too long to ever go back. Chapter 6. The setup. The wedding venue was magnificent. The grand ballroom at the Grandstone Hotel had been transformed into something from a fairy tale. Ice sculptures, thousands of white roses, crystal chandeliers dripping light like frozen tears. Josh stood at the entrance, watching the setup crew move through their choreographed chaos. And there, on a ladder near the stage, hanging strands of lights, was Issa. She wore the same hotel uniform, her hair pulled back, her face focused on her work. She hadn't seen him yet. Josh watched her move, efficient and graceful, utterly unaware of his presence, or maybe aware and deliberately ignoring him. He walked closer. You're working my wedding. Issa's hands stilled on the lights. She didn't look down. I work every high-profile event in this city. The pay is better than regular housekeeping shifts. I have a child to feed. Issa, please come down. Talk to me. I'm working, Mr. Brown. If you have a complaint about the setup, you should speak to the event coordinator. I don't have a complaint. I just want to talk. We have nothing to talk about. I went to see my mother yesterday. That made her look down. Their eyes met. Good for you. She admitted everything. What she did to you, the money she offered, getting you fired, all of it. Again, good for you. You got a confession. Want a medal? Josh moved to the base of the ladder. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. For all of it. Apologies are free, Josh. They cost you nothing. Then what do you want from me? I want you to leave me alone. I want you to get married to your perfect society woman and live your perfect rich life and forget we exist. I can't do that. Why? Because you suddenly grew a conscience? Because seeing Whoopi made you feel guilty? That's not enough. Feelings aren't enough. Then what is enough? Nothing. The word burst out of her, too loud for the public space. She lowered her voice, aware of the setup crew watching. Nothing you do will ever be enough because you can't undo the past. You can't give me back the nights I cried myself to sleep. You can't give Whoopi back the father she needed when she was learning to walk, learning to talk, learning that she was different from other kids because hers was gone. Let me try, please. I got the DNA test results this morning. Official, legal, she's mine. Congratulations. Biology confirms what I already knew. Let me be in her life. Let me be her father. Isa's expression hardened. You want to be her father? Fine. Here's what being a father means. It means showing up every day, not when it's convenient, not when you feel guilty. Every day. I can do that. Can you? Because in 2 days, you're marrying a woman who isn't me. You're merging your company with her family's empire. You're becoming one of the most powerful couples in American business. Where does a 5-year-old girl from the wrong side of town fit into that picture? I'll make it fit. How? Weekend visitation? Taking her to the zoo when your schedule allows? Showing up for birthdays with expensive presents to make up for not being there the rest of the year? That's not what Because that's what rich men do, Josh. They write checks and call it fatherhood. Is that who you're going to be? Josh stepped closer, his voice dropping. What if I don't go through with the wedding? Isa froze. What? What if I called it off? What if I chose differently this time? You'd lose everything. Not everything. Your company, your reputation, your mother's approval, all of it. So? Isa shook her head. Don't do that. Don't make grand statements you can't follow through on. I learned that lesson 5 years ago. I'm serious. You're emotional. There's a difference. In 2 days, when you're at that altar and you see 400 guests and you think about everything you worked for, you'll make the same choice you always make. The safe one, the profitable one, the one your mother approves of. You don't know that. I know you, Josh Brown, or at least I knew the man you were, and that man chose his empire over love. I don't see any evidence the current version is different. Before Josh could respond, a small voice interrupted. Mommy? They both turned. Whoopi stood at the ballroom entrance, holding the hand of an older woman Josh didn't recognize. The woman looked apologetic. Sorry, Isa. She heard you were working late and insisted on saying goodnight. Isa's entire demeanor shifted instantly. The anger disappeared, replaced by the soft warmth of a mother. It's okay, Mrs. Chen. Come here, baby. Whoopi ran to her mother, wrapping small arms around Isa's legs. Then she saw Josh. Her face lit up with recognition. Rabbit Man! Josh knelt down to her eye level, his heart suddenly too large for his chest. Hi, Whoopi. Do you remember me? You're the man from the fancy hotel, with the shiny floor. She looked at him seriously. Did you find my rabbit? I did. I still have him. He's safe. Can I have him back? Of course, I'll bring him next time I see you. Whoopi's eyes went wide. You're coming back? Josh glanced at Isa, who was watching this interaction with an unreadable expression. If your mom says it's okay, yes, I'd like to come back. Whoopi turned to her mother. Mommy, can he? Please? Isa looked between her daughter's hopeful face and Josh's pleading eyes. Whoopi, baby, remember what we talked about not getting too excited when... But he has my rabbit, and he's nice. He smells like the fancy soap at the hotel. Despite everything, Isa almost smiled. Almost. He does smell like fancy soap. So he can come back? We'll talk about it later, baby. Right now, Mrs. Chen needs to take you home for bed. But, Mommy, no buts. Tomorrow's Saturday. I have the day off. We'll talk then. Whoopi turned back to Josh with the devastating honesty only 5-year-olds possess. Are you my daddy? The question stopped everything. The setup crew pretended not to listen. Mrs. Chen looked uncomfortable. Isa's face went pale. Josh looked at this little girl with his eyes and Isa's smile and felt something fundamental shift inside him. This wasn't about guilt or obligation or second chances. This was about the simple, terrifying truth that somewhere in the world, a piece of him existed in the form of a 5-year-old girl who deserved more than he'd given her. "Yes," he said quietly. "Yes. I'm your daddy." Whoopi processed this for a moment. Then, with heartbreaking simplicity, she asked, "Then why weren't you here before?" Josh opened his mouth, but nothing came out. What could he possibly say? How could he explain to a child that he'd chosen money over her existence? Isa knelt down beside them. "Whoopi, baby, remember the story I tell you, about the prince who had to go save his kingdom?" Whoopi nodded slowly. "Well, sometimes princes get lost in their kingdoms. Sometimes they forget what really matters. But when they remember, sometimes they come home." She looked at Josh when she said it, not with forgiveness, with challenge. Whoopi looked between them. "Is he home now?" "I don't know yet, baby. We'll see." "Okay." Whoopi accepted this with the faith of a child who trusted her mother absolutely. She turned back to Josh and, with no warning, hugged him, small arms around his neck, her head tucked under his chin. Josh froze for a second, then wrapped his arms around her carefully, like she was made of glass. She smelled like children's shampoo and something indefinably sweet. His daughter. His actual daughter. "I missed you," Whoopi whispered into his shoulder. "Even though I didn't know you yet." Josh's eyes burned. "I missed you too, so much." Isa gently extracted Whoopi from his arms. "Time for bed, baby. Say goodbye." "Bye, Daddy." Whoopi waved as Mrs. Chen led her away. "Don't forget my rabbit." "I won't forget," Josh called after her. "I promise." They disappeared through the service entrance, and Josh was left alone with Isa in the half-finished ballroom that would host his wedding in 2 days. "Don't make promises you can't keep," Isa said quietly. "I'm keeping this one." "We'll see." She turned back to her ladder. "I have to finish this setup. You should go." "Isa, go, Josh. Go back to your penthouse and your wedding plans and your perfect life. Leave me alone to do my job." "I meant what I said about calling off the wedding." She climbed back up the ladder without responding. Josh stood there for another moment, then turned to leave. At the ballroom entrance, he looked back. Isa was hanging lights with steady hands, her face hidden in shadows, and Josh realized that for the first time in 5 years, he knew exactly what he wanted. The question was whether he was brave enough to take it. Chapter 7. 3 days. Josh stood outside Isa's apartment building as the sun rose. He'd barely slept, his mind circling the same impossible equation. The wedding was tomorrow, and he still didn't know what he was going to do, but he knew what he wanted to try first. The building was old, paint peeling near the doorframes, the entrance buzzer half broken. Josh pressed the button for apartment 4D and waited. Static crackled. Then Isa's voice, suspicious. "Who is it?" "It's me, Josh. Please don't hang up." Long silence. "What do you want?" 3 days. That's all I'm asking for. 3 days to prove I'm serious." "Serious about what?" "About being her father. About showing up. Please, Isa, give me a chance." More silence. Then the door buzzed open. Josh climbed 4 flights of stairs. The hallway smelled like cooking and old carpet. He found apartment 4D and knocked gently. Isa opened the door. She wore an old t-shirt and sweatpants, her hair wrapped in a scarf. She looked exhausted and beautiful and absolutely furious. "You have 3 minutes to explain why I shouldn't slam this door in your face. I want 3 days with Whoopi, with both of you, to show you I mean what I say. You're getting married tomorrow. I know. So this is what? A trial run at being daddy before you disappear into your new life? It's me trying to figure out who I am, who I want to be." Isa crossed her arms. "And you need to experiment on my daughter to do that? I need to know if I'm capable of being the man I should have been 5 years ago." That's not an answer. It's the only honest one I have. Whoopi's voice came from inside the apartment. Mommy, is someone at the door? Isa's expression softened instantly. Just a minute, baby. She turned back to Josh, her voice dropping. If I say yes, there are rules. You don't make promises you can't keep. You don't buy her love with expensive presents. And when this 3 days is over, if you walk away, you don't come back. Ever. I won't let you break her heart twice. I understand. Do you? Because once she gets attached, there's no taking that back. If you're doing this out of guilt or some fantasy of redemption, walk away now. Josh met her eyes. I'm doing this because she's my daughter, and I've already missed 5 years. I don't want to miss another day. Isa studied him for a long moment. Then she stepped back and opened the door fully. 3 days, starting now. The apartment was tiny, a living room that doubled as a bedroom, one small bedroom beyond that, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in. But it was clean and bright, with Whoopi's drawings taped to every wall, pictures of stick-figure families, houses with big windows, sons with smiling faces. Whoopi sat at a small table, coloring. She looked up when Josh entered, and her face transformed with joy. You came back. Mommy, he came back. I see that, baby. Whoopi ran to Josh and grabbed his hand. Do you want to see my room? I have a dollhouse. Mrs. Chen found it at a yard sale and Mommy fixed it. I'd love to see it. The next 3 days unfolded like a dream and a revelation all at once. That first morning, Josh made breakfast. He burned the eggs. Whoopi thought it was hilarious. Isa showed him how to scramble them properly, their hands briefly touching as she guided the spatula. Neither acknowledged it. They went to the park. Whoopi showed him the swings, the slide, the tree she liked to climb, even though it scared Isa. Josh pushed her on the swings, while Isa watched from a bench, her expression carefully neutral. Higher, Daddy! Higher! The word hit him every time. Daddy! Like he'd earned it just by showing up. That afternoon, Whoopi fell asleep during a cartoon. Josh carried her to her small bed, her head heavy on his shoulder. He tucked her in carefully, and when he came back to the living room, Isa was watching him. You're good with her, she said quietly. She makes it easy. No, you make it look easy. There's a difference. That night they ordered pizza because none of them could cook. They ate on the floor because the table was too small for 3. Whoopi talked non-stop about everything and nothing. Josh and Isa listened, occasionally catching each other's eyes across the conversation. The second day, Whoopi wanted to show him her school. They walked there together, Whoopi between them, holding both their hands. People stared. A rich man in expensive clothes, a tired woman in discount store jeans, and a little girl who didn't see any of it. This is where I learned the alphabet. And this is where Tommy pushed me and I pushed him back and we both got in trouble. Isa explained every story, filling in details Whoopi forgot. Josh listened and learned. His daughter was brave, smart, funny, kind. Everything good in her came from Isa. Everything she could have been came from what he'd missed. That evening, Josh read Whoopi bedtime stories. 3 books, then 4, because she kept asking for one more. Finally, her eyes drooped. Daddy, she murmured, half asleep. Yeah, baby? Are you staying forever now? The question paralyzed him. Isa stood in the doorway, waiting for his answer. I'm here right now, Josh said carefully, and I'm so happy to be here. But are you staying? I don't know yet, sweetheart. I'm trying to figure that out. Oh! Whoopi processed this with 5-year-old logic. Okay, but you'll tell me, right? If you have to go back to your kingdom. I promise I'll tell you. Okay, I love you, Daddy. The words hit him like a physical force. This child who barely knew him, offering love with the fearless generosity of innocence. I love you too, Whoopi. She smiled and closed her eyes. Within seconds, she was asleep. Josh stood there, watching her breathe. His daughter. The word felt more real every time he thought it. Isa touched his shoulder gently. Come on, let her sleep. They went to the living room. Issa poured 2 mugs of tea and sat on the worn couch. Josh sat beside her, careful to maintain distance. She loves you already, Issa said. You realize that, right? She's already attached. I know. So if you're going to leave, Josh, do it now, before it gets worse. What if I don't want to leave? Issa set down her mug. What does that mean? Tomorrow's my wedding day. Right now, sitting here with you and Whoopi, that feels like the most absurd sentence I've ever said. But it's true. You're getting married to someone else in... She checked her phone. 16 hours. I know. So what are you saying? I'm saying I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be in 2 places at once. I don't know how to choose. Yes, you do. You've always known. You just don't want to face it. Then help me face it. Tell me what you want. Issa looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since he'd shown up at her door. What I want? I want the last 5 years back. I want to not have been homeless and desperate and terrified. I want Whoopi to have had her father from the beginning. I want... Her voice broke. Josh reached for her hand instinctively, and she let him take it. I want to still be the woman who believed in you, she whispered. The woman who thought you were brave and good and worth loving. But she's gone, Josh. You killed her when you walked away. I'm sorry. I know you are. But sorry doesn't bring her back. What about now? This version of you right now. What does she want? Issa pulled her hand back. She wants you to make a choice. Not for me. Not for Whoopi. For yourself. Figure out who you actually are. The man who chooses love or the man who chooses fear. And then live with that choice. What if I choose wrong? You already chose wrong once. At least this time you'll know what you're giving up. They sat in silence as the night deepened around them. Tomorrow was his wedding. Tomorrow was the rest of his life. Tomorrow was the choice he'd been running from for 5 years. And sitting in this tiny apartment with the woman he'd never stopped loving and the daughter he hadn't known existed, Josh finally understood what Issa had been trying to tell him. It wasn't about choosing between 2 women, it was about choosing who he was going to be. And time had just run out. Chapter 8. The morning of Josh woke on Issa's couch to the sound of Whoopi giggling in the kitchen. Sunlight streamed through thin curtains. His wedding day. His actual wedding day. He checked his phone. 47 missed calls. Texts from his mother, the wedding planner, his best man, Natasha. All variations of, "Where are you?" and "Call immediately." The wedding started at 4 o'clock, 6 hours from now. Josh stood and followed the sound of laughter. Issa and Whoopi were making pancakes, flour everywhere, both of them covered in batter. "We're making breakfast," Whoopi announced proudly. "Mommy says you're terrible at cooking, so we wanted to make something good." "That's very thoughtful," Josh said, his heart too full. Issa glanced at him, then at the clock. "Shouldn't you be somewhere?" "Probably." "Josh, I know. Can I have breakfast first? With you two?" Issa studied him, then nodded. "Pancakes will be ready in 5 minutes." They ate together at the small table. Whoopi chattered about a dream she'd had where they all lived in a castle made of cookies. Issa was quiet, watching Josh with an expression he couldn't read. His phone kept buzzing. He kept ignoring it. Finally, Issa stood. "Whoopi, baby, go put on your clothes for the day. The purple dress I laid out." "Okay." Whoopi bounced off. Issa turned to Josh. "You need to go." "I know." "Then why aren't you?" "Because leaving this apartment means making a decision I'm not ready for." "You've had 3 days. It's not enough time. It's all the time you have." Issa started clearing plates, her movements sharp with frustration. "You're getting married in 6 hours, Josh. 6 hours, and you're sitting in my kitchen eating pancakes like this is normal. What if I don't go?" She dropped a plate in the sink hard enough that it cracked. "Stop saying that." "Why?" "Because you don't mean it. You're scared and confused, and you like the idea of being noble. But when you're standing at that altar with 400 people watching, you'll do what you always do. Choose the safe thing. You don't know that. I know you better than you know yourself. Josh stood and walked to her. Then tell me, who am I? Right now, in this moment, who am I? Issa turned to face him, eyes bright with unshed tears. You're a man at a crossroads, again, just like 5 years ago, and I'm terrified you're going to make the same choice. What if I told you I love you, that I never stopped loving you? I'd say love isn't enough. It wasn't enough then. It won't be enough now. Then what is enough? Action, choice, showing up when it's hard, choosing me when it costs you everything. I'm trying to do that. Are you? Or are you just testing whether you can before you commit to anything? Before Josh could answer, his phone rang. Not a call, an alert. The wedding venue confirming his arrival time for photos. 2 hours. Issa saw it too. You need to go. Get dressed. Get to your wedding. Issa. Go, Josh. Figure out who you are, but do it somewhere else. I can't watch you destroy yourself again. What about us? There is no us. There's me and Whoopi and the life we built without you, and there's you and your empire and the life you chose instead. Those things don't coexist. They could, if I choose differently. But will you? She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. When you're standing at that altar, when you see your mother's face and Natasha's father and all those people who made you who you are now, will you actually walk away? I don't know. Then you have your answer. Whoopi ran back in, wearing her purple dress. Daddy, are you leaving? Josh knelt down to her level. I have to go for a little while, baby. When are you coming back? The question hung in the air. Issa watched him, waiting. I don't know yet, Josh said honestly. I have something I need to do. Something important. More important than us? No, nothing's more important than you. But I have to do this thing and then I'll know. Whoopi's face fell. You're going back to your kingdom. Maybe. I don't know. But you said you'd tell me. I'm telling you now. I don't know what's going to happen today, but I promise no matter what, I'll tell you the truth, okay? You promise? I promise. Whoopi hugged him tight. I hope you stay, Daddy. I hope your kingdom can wait. Josh looked at Issa over Whoopi's head. She had tears streaming down her face, but she said nothing. He stood, kissed Whoopi's forehead, and walked to the door. His hand on the knob, he turned back. I love you both. Whatever happens today, I love you both. Issa wiped her eyes. Love is just a word, Josh. What are you going to do about it? I don't know yet. Then go figure it out. Josh left. The door closed behind him. He stood in the hallway, the sounds of the building around him, Whoopi's muffled crying audible through the thin walls. He pulled out his phone. The time, 10:07 a.m. 6 hours until his wedding, 6 hours to decide who Josh Brown was going to be. He called his driver. I need you at this address, now. The luxury town car felt obscene after 3 days in Issa's apartment. Josh rode in silence back to the Grandstone Hotel, watching the city transform from where Issa lived to where he lived. 2 different worlds. At the hotel, his mother was waiting in the lobby. She grabbed his arm the moment he entered. Where have you been? The wedding planner is hysterical. Natasha's been calling. The photographer needs you in 30 minutes. I need to talk to you. We can talk while you get ready. Move. In his suite, stylists and assistants swarmed. His tuxedo hung waiting. Wedding gifts were stacked everywhere. His mother supervised while people dressed him like a doll. Did you see that girl again? Diane asked when they were briefly alone. Her name is Issa. I don't care what her name is, did you? Yes, and Whoopi. I spent 3 days with them. Joshua, please tell me you're not going to do something stupid. Define stupid. You know exactly what I mean. This wedding represents everything we've worked for, everything I sacrificed to give you. You can't throw it away for some fantasy of playing house. What if it's not a fantasy? It is. That woman isn't part of your world. She never was. Accept it and move on. She was my world. Before you decided she wasn't good enough, I decided nothing. Reality decided. You can't build an empire with someone who doesn't understand power. Maybe I don't want an empire. Then you're a fool, and I raised you better than that. Josh's best man entered. Cars are here. We need to move to the venue. His mother smiled triumphantly. See, no time for doubts. It's time to become who you were meant to be. Josh looked at himself in the mirror. Designer tuxedo, perfect hair, the picture of success, and completely hollow. I need 5 minutes alone. Joshua, we don't have 5 minutes. Everyone left. Josh sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out his phone. One last message from Issa, sent an hour ago. Whatever you choose it fully. Whoopi deserves a father who's all in or all out, not halfway. He stared at the words, all in or all out, the choice he'd been avoiding his entire life. Josh stood, straightened his bow tie, and walked out to face whatever came next. Chapter 9. At the altar. The grand ballroom looked like something built to worship wealth itself. 20-foot ice sculptures caught light from chandeliers that cost more than houses. White roses covered every surface, their perfume so heavy it choked. 400 guests sat in perfect rows, diamonds glittering at every throat, watching the stage where two empires were about to become one. Josh stood at the altar and felt like he was drowning. His tuxedo cost $12,000. His shoes were Italian leather. His cufflinks were platinum. Everything about him screamed success. Everything about him was a lie. In the front row, his mother sat like a queen at a coronation. Diane Brown had won. After years of molding her son, after destroying the woman who threatened her plans, after controlling every aspect of his life, she'd finally gotten exactly what she wanted. Her son was about to marry into American royalty. Beside her sat Leonard Sterling, checking his watch like this ceremony was just another business meeting to get through. Around them, board members and investors filled the seats, senators, CEOs, people who measured worth in zeros and power in access. Not one person in this room gave a damn about Josh Brown the person. They cared about Josh Brown the asset, the investment, the merger opportunity. The music swelled, violins and cellos, playing something classical and soulless. The guests stood as one synchronized unit. Natasha appeared at the end of the aisle. She was stunning, objectively, mathematically stunning. Her gown was a masterpiece of design, fitted perfectly to her frame, trailing behind her like something from a magazine cover. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was perfect. Everything about her was exactly, precisely, perfectly wrong. She walked alone, no father giving her away. Even in this traditional moment, Natasha Sterling maintained her independence. It was one of the things Josh respected about her. She'd never pretended to be anything other than what she was, which made what he was about to do even worse. She reached the altar and took his hands. Her fingers were ice cold despite the warmth of the room. "You're shaking," she whispered, so quiet only he could hear. "I'm sorry," he managed. "Don't be, not yet." The officiant opened his book. Reverend something or other, hired because he'd married 3 presidents and knew how to perform for cameras. He smiled at the crowd with practiced warmth and began the ceremony. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." Josh heard the words from very far away. His vision had narrowed to a tunnel. His heart hammered so hard, he thought the microphone on the officiant might pick it up. He scanned the crowd. Faces he'd seen at 100 charity dinners. People who'd celebrated his success and would absolutely delight in his failure. His mother's friends, his board members. Everyone who'd built the cage he'd been living in for 5 years. Then, in the very back row, partially hidden behind a marble pillar, he saw them. Issa stood holding Whoopi, both of them dressed simply, both of them looking so out of place in this palace of wealth, it made his chest ache. Issa wore a black dress she'd probably owned for years. Whoopi wore her purple dress from this morning, the one with the small stain on the collar that wouldn't come out. They'd come. After everything, after he'd spent 3 days in their world and left this morning with no promises, they'd come to watch him make his choice. Issa's eyes met his across 400 people and a lifetime of regrets. She wasn't crying. She was just watching, waiting to see who Josh Brown really was when everything was on the line. Whoopi waved at him, a small, innocent wave. His daughter, his actual daughter, who thought he was the rabbit man and didn't understand that her father was about to choose between her and everything else in the world. The officiant was still talking, something about the sanctity of marriage, the joining of two families, the blessed union. Josh's hands were sweating in Natasha's. She squeezed gently, and when he looked at her, she was watching him with an expression of perfect calm. If anyone objects to this union, the officiant intoned with the confidence of a man who'd never once been interrupted, "Speak now or forever hold your peace." The traditional pause. 3 seconds of silence where nothing ever happened. Josh's mouth opened. No sound came out. His mother's face in the front row was triumphant. Leonard Sterling was already smiling, probably calculating the increased stock value. The board members looked satisfied. And in the back, Issa started to turn away, started to gather Whoopi, to leave, to walk out of his life one final time. That movement broke something in Josh's chest. "I object." His voice cracked on the words, barely audible, but in the perfect acoustics of the ballroom they carried. The room went completely still. "What?" The officiant blinked, confused. Josh cleared his throat and said it louder. "I object. To this marriage. To this whole thing. I object." Natasha's hands tightened on his, not stopping him, supporting him. "Joshua!" His mother's voice cut through the silence like a whip. "What are you doing?" Josh turned to face the crowd. 400 faces staring at him with shock and growing scandal. This was going to be on every society page by tonight, every blog, every social media platform. The humiliation would be legendary. He didn't care. "I'm sorry," he said to the room. His voice shook, but he kept going. "I'm sorry to everyone who came here today expecting a wedding. I'm sorry for wasting your time, but I can't do this." "Joshua, sit down." His mother stood, her face white with fury. "No, Mom, I'm done sitting down. I'm done doing what you tell me. I'm done being who you made me." He turned to Natasha. "I'm sorry. You deserve better than this. You deserve someone who actually loves you." "I know," she said quietly. Then, louder, so the room could hear, "I deserve someone who chooses me, not someone who's choosing obligation." She stepped back, releasing his hands, and in that gesture gave him permission to destroy everything they'd built. Josh walked to the edge of the stage and looked out at the crowd, at his mother's horrified face, at Leonard Sterling already on his phone, probably calling lawyers, at the board members calculating damage, at the society queens who would dine out on this story for months, and at the back, Issa standing frozen, Whoopi in her arms, both of them staring at him with identical expressions of disbelief. "5 years ago," Josh said, his voice carrying to every corner of the massive room, "I made a choice. I chose money over love. I chose my mother's approval over my own happiness. I chose to abandon a woman who loved me because I was terrified of being poor." His mother tried to speak, but he talked over her. "That woman's name is Issa Rae. She's standing in the back row right now, holding my daughter. My 5-year-old daughter named Whoopi, who I didn't know existed until 3 days ago, because when Issa tried to tell me she was pregnant, my mother had her thrown out of my building and fired from her jobs." Gasps rippled through the crowd. His mother's face went from white to red. "Joshua, how dare you? How dare I what? Tell the truth? You paid her to disappear. When she refused, you destroyed her life. You made sure I never knew I had a daughter because she didn't fit your plans for me." He turned back to the crowd, and he could feel the shift happening. The scandal was too good. These people were watching his life implode in real time, and they couldn't look away. "I spent 5 years building an empire, making money, becoming successful, becoming everything my mother wanted. And I was empty, completely, totally empty. I had everything and I had nothing. He pointed to the back row. 400 heads turned as one. That woman raised my daughter alone, worked 3 jobs, was homeless for a month, had my baby in a county hospital with no one beside her, and she never asked me for a dime because she has more dignity in one finger than this entire room combined. Leonard Sterling stood. This is outrageous. The contracts. Fuck the contracts! Josh's voice rose, and people actually gasped at the profanity in this sacred space. Fuck the merger and the business deal and all of it. I'm not a commodity to be traded. I'm a human being, and I'm done pretending that money matters more than love. His mother was screaming now, but security was moving toward her, not toward him. Natasha had apparently given them different instructions. Josh walked down the altar steps, started moving through the rows of shocked guests. His mother grabbed his arm as he passed. If you do this, you lose everything, the company, the money, your future, everything I built for you. Josh looked at the woman who'd raised him, the woman who'd sacrificed so much to give him opportunities, the woman who'd also destroyed his happiness and called it protection. You didn't build it for me, Mom. You built it for you, and I'm done living in your cage. He pulled his arm free and kept walking. Leonard Sterling stepped into the aisle, blocking his path. The man was 60, powerful, and used to being obeyed. You walk out of here, and I'll destroy you. I'll make sure you never work again. I'll sue you for breach of contract. I'll take everything you own and burn the rest. Josh looked at this titan of industry and felt nothing but pity. Then do it. Take it all, because none of it is worth what I gave up to get it. He walked around Leonard Sterling and kept moving toward the back of the room. The guests were standing now, phones out, filming everything. This would be viral within the hour. His reputation was dying with every step. His empire was crumbling in real time. Everything he'd worked for was turning to ash. And with each step closer to Isa, he felt lighter. He reached the back row, stood in front of the woman he'd abandoned and the daughter he'd never known. Whoopi looked up at him with wide, confused eyes. Daddy? Why is everyone yelling? Because Daddy just made a very big choice, baby. What choice? Josh knelt down so he was eye level with both of them. Isa's face was wet with tears, her whole body trembling. I chose you, he said simply. Both of you, over everything else in the world. I chose love. Isa's voice came out broken. You just destroyed your entire life. No, I just started living it. Your company never made me happy. Your mother will survive without controlling me. Josh, you'll have nothing. He reached up and touched her face gently. I'll have you, if you'll let me. I'll have Whoopi. I'll have a chance to be the man I should have been 5 years ago. That's not nothing. That's everything. Whoopi looked between them. Are you coming home with us, Daddy? If your mommy says yes. Mommy. Whoopi tugged on Isa's dress. Can Daddy come home? Isa looked at Josh, tears streaming down her face, her entire world shifting. This isn't a fairy tale. You don't get to just decide you want us and have everything be okay. I know. You're going to lose everything. Money, status, your mother's love, all of it. I already lost everything that mattered once. I won't make that mistake again. You'll have to prove this isn't just guilt or a dramatic gesture. You'll have to show up every single day for years. You'll have to earn your place in our lives. I will, however long it takes. Isa looked at Whoopi, whose face was full of hope and trust and the heartbreaking faith children have in their parents. Then she looked back at Josh, this man who'd broken her heart and was now offering to spend his life earning it back. Okay, she whispered. Okay, come home. Josh stood and pulled them both into his arms. Whoopi between them, Isa's face pressed against his chest, both of them crying and laughing and holding on like they'd never let go. Behind them, chaos erupted, his mother being escorted out by security, screaming about betrayal. Leonard Sterling on the phone with his lawyers. Guests filming everything, posting everything, destroying what remained of Josh Brown's reputation. But Josh didn't turn around, didn't look back, didn't give one single damn about any of it. He walked out of the Grandstone Hotel with Isa's hand in his and Whoopi on his shoulders, toward a future he couldn't see but finally wanted. The cameras flashed, people shouted questions, his phone was already blowing up with calls and texts and the death throes of his old life. None of it mattered. On Whoopi's shoulders, laughing as she played with his hair, Isa beside him crying and smiling at the same time, Josh Brown walked out of his gilded cage and into freedom. And he'd never felt more alive. Chapter 10. Love over Empire. The first month after the wedding was brutal. Josh woke every morning in Isa's cramped apartment, his body screaming at him that something was wrong. No 1,000-thread-count sheets, no silence broken only by the hum of expensive air conditioning. Instead, traffic sounds at 5 in the morning, Whoopi crying from nightmares, neighbors arguing through thin walls. His phone never stopped ringing. Lawyers, creditors, reporters, everyone wanting a piece of the scandal. Leonard Sterling made good on his threat. The lawsuits came fast and brutal. Breach of contract, fraud, every legal weapon a billionaire could deploy to destroy a man who'd embarrassed his daughter. Josh's company collapsed in 3 weeks. The board voted him out unanimously. Assets seized, investors demanding blood. By the end of the first month, Josh Brown went from billionaire to bankrupt. His mother sent one text. "You made your choice. Live with it." He deleted her number. The media called him the runaway groom. Social media tore him apart. Half called him romantic, half called him a fraud. Nobody cared what he actually felt, just what the story meant for clicks and shares. Isa watched him struggle with something close to satisfaction. She didn't coddle him, didn't say it would be okay. She let him face the full weight of what he'd chosen. "This is what I lived with for 5 years," she said one night when he couldn't sleep, anxiety eating him alive. "No money, no security, no idea how to pay next month's rent. Welcome to my world, Josh Brown." It wasn't cruel. It was truth. And slowly, painfully, Josh learned to live in it. He got a job teaching basic coding at the community center. The pay was laughable compared to what he used to make. But a kid named Deshaun figured out how to build his first app, and the look on that boy's face reminded Josh why he'd loved technology before it became about money. Isa went back to school. Nursing program. She studied while Josh put Whoopi to bed, and he'd find her asleep over textbooks at 2 in the morning. He'd cover her with a blanket and think about how she'd done this alone while pregnant, working 3 jobs, and somehow survived. Whoopi adjusted faster than either of them. She didn't care that Daddy used to be rich. She cared that he showed up for breakfast, that he walked her to school, that he was there when she woke up from bad dreams. "Daddy?" she asked one night, 3 months in. "Are you sad you're not a prince anymore?" Josh tucked her in, smoothing her hair back. "I was never a prince, baby. I was just a guy who forgot what mattered." "But you remember now?" "Yeah, I remember now." The hard days were brutal. Days when the electricity got shut off because they couldn't pay the bill. Days when Whoopi needed new shoes and there was no money. Days when Josh walked past his old building and saw someone else living his life. But there were other days too. Days when Isa laughed at something stupid he said, really laughed, and he remembered what her joy sounded like. Days when Whoopi brought home artwork from school and wanted it hung on their refrigerator like it was the Louvre. Days when he realized he'd gone a whole week without thinking about stock prices or board meetings or any of the things that used to consume him. By month 6, something had shifted. Josh woke one morning to find Isa already up, making coffee in their tiny kitchen. She wore one of his old shirts and nothing else, and the morning light caught her just right. She looked tired, beautiful, real. "What?" she asked, catching him staring. "Nothing, just looking at you. I look like hell. I've been up since 4 studying. You look perfect." She rolled her eyes but smiled. "Liar." "Isa? Yeah? I'm happy, like actually genuinely happy. Is that weird?" She walked over and sat on his lap, coffee cup in hand. Little weird. You're broke, blackballed from your industry and living in an apartment the size of your old closet. I know. And I'm happy anyway. She kissed him softly. Then maybe you're finally getting it. Getting what? That love isn't something you fit into your life. It is your life. Everything else is just noise. That afternoon, Isa graduated from her nursing program. Josh sat in the audience with Whoopi on his lap, watching Isa walk across the stage in her cap and gown. She'd done it, worked full-time, raised a daughter alone, survived poverty and heartbreak, and still managed to finish her degree. After the ceremony, they celebrated with cheap champagne and take-out pizza in their apartment. "I'm so proud of you," Josh said. "Proud enough to let me pay rent next month," Isa teased. "You've been paying rent the whole time." "I know, just wanted to hear you admit it." They laughed, real laughter, the kind that came from comfort, not performance. Whoopi fell asleep between them on the couch, her head on Josh's chest, her feet in Isa's lap. They sat like that for an hour, neither wanting to move, both afraid to break the moment. "Josh," Isa whispered. "Yeah? I forgive you." The words stopped his heart. "What?" "I forgive you. For leaving, for choosing wrong, for all of it. I forgive you." "Isa, I'm not saying I've forgotten. I haven't. I'll probably never forget. But I forgive you. Because I see who you are now. Not who you were, not who you're trying to be. Just who you actually are when everything is stripped away." "And who am I?" "You're a man who chose love over fear. Finally, after everything, you chose us." Josh's vision blurred with tears. "I love you so much." "I love you too. It scares me how much, but I do." They kissed over their sleeping daughter, and it felt like coming home. That night, after Whoopi was in bed, they made love for the first time in 6 years, slow and gentle and full of everything they'd lost and found again. Afterward, lying tangled together in her small bed, Josh stared at the ceiling. "What are you thinking?" Isa asked. "That I had a penthouse suite with a bed that cost $20,000, and this one's better." "Liar. I'm serious. That bed was in a cage. This one's in a home." Isa propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "You really don't miss it? Any of it?" "Sometimes I miss having money, I won't lie. But I don't miss who I had to be to have it. That person was hollow. This person is actually alive. Even though you're broke and living in an apartment the size of your old closet, and eating eggs, I have to teach you how to cook. Especially because of all that. Because it's real. Because you're real. Because Whoopi is real. Because this love is real and not some strategic alliance." Isa laid her head back on his chest. "You've changed." "Good. No, I mean really changed. You're not the man who left me, but you're also not the man who came back at the wedding. You're someone new. Is that okay?" "It's better than okay. It's who you were always supposed to be." They fell asleep like that, wrapped together in a bed too small for 2 people, in an apartment too small for 3, in a life too small for the man he used to be. And it was perfect.